Okay, so this video today is sort of an update, but also a how to get a construction loan for a steel building that you plan on living in. So one of the problems that I've come across with most of the banks that I called was that they don't want to touch real estate. If you don't already own the land, they don't want to loan to you. And that's more specifically for agricultural companies because they are the ones that typically they don't have a problem with steel framed buildings because they help people get financing to put up barns and things like that. So first of all, what I did to get a construction loan is all parts of this process kind of require a good old bit of elbow grease. I had to call, pick up the phone. I know a lot of people don't like to do that. Call dozens of contractors and the steel building manufacturers and all of that, and look up layouts, though that part's fun. So what I did for the banks was I did a Google search of banks in the area where I wanted to build. So we're building in Windsor, New York, and Binghamton, New York is the nearest big town, and it's 20 minutes away. So I used Binghamton because there would be more there than in Windsor. And the Google search, when you go to the map view, it just kind of gives you a list. Actually, I don't even know if I needed to go to the map view, but anyway, it gave me a list of all the banks. So I wrote down all of the banks and their phone numbers. And I didn't do this step because I find it quicker to make a phone call, but for those of you that are hesitant to do a phone call, you can go to their website first and see which ones do construction loans. For me, it takes just as much time to poke around on their website as it does to talk to someone and say, do you do construction loans? Let's assume you don't want to call them first. Look on their websites and see the ones that, you go usually to personal banking, mortgages, and then somewhere in there they'll list their loan types, and it may say new construction or construction loan, something like that. If it lists that, they do construction loans. So write down on your little list of all the banks which ones do construction loans. Call those first because you know that they're going to do it. When you call them, the main bank number is not going to be answered by a mortgage specialist. It's going to be answered by just a teller. And they typically, I have found, if you say, do you guys do construction loans? They'll be like, I don't know. So the ones that you already know do construction loans, when the teller picks up the phone, say, can I speak to your mortgage specialist? Or loan originator, whatever. Mortgage specialist, they'll know what you mean. So once you say that, they'll either transfer you or they'll give you that person's name and number. Alternatively, they may ask for your email and phone numbers to have that person call you. I would always rather call them because, I do sales too. I don't always get around to calling people in a timely manner, but I always answer my phone. So calling them is usually quicker. Okay, so then when you talk to the mortgage specialist, what you want to ask is what percent down they require. For us, we couldn't afford 20% down, which even before COVID was typical. But since COVID, a lot of banks, because of the CARES Act, they actually lost a lot of money and some banks had to close because people had these construction loans outstanding and the, whatever the act was that said, hey, if you're struggling during COVID, you don't have to make your mortgage payments. Mortgages had to eat a lot of costs, especially during construction where they have to, pay the contractors. So anyway, ask the percentage down. The goal of this, for us at least, was to try to find one that was less than 20 because with our previous bank, we'd only needed 5% down, but when we told them it would be a steel building, they hiked it up to 20 and we were like, we can't do that. So ask them the percent down and ask them what rate they charge. This won't be a deal breaker, honestly. You're going to end up going with whoever will work with you and your steel building. But if there are two, go with the one with the lower rate. So ask for that. And if for whatever reason they don't do construction loans anymore, ask them if they know who is. They have no reason to hide that from you because they're not losing business. You need a construction loan. And I've found that banks, actually multiple banks, referred me to the one bank that I think we're going to end up using. And so just to show you what that elbow grease looks like, this is my list of all the banks that I called and my notes about if I left a voicemail or what they said or if they do loans or not. And especially if you're building a steel building, I did call a couple of agricultural lenders as well, who, like I said, they did not require, or they were totally fine with steel buildings, but I found that they required 20% down or more. So that was not very helpful. I did reach out to the FSA, which in our previous video, we were writing a business plan for, because they had these like down payment assistance loans that were available. And I don't know if the gentleman that I spoke to really knew what he was saying. He seemed like he was a newer employee, but he said for the new farmer loans, you need to have 3 years of farming experience, farm management experience. And I was like, for a new farmer loan? And he said that there is more wiggle room if I already owned the land. But because a construction loan, we want to purchase the land and build the house at the same time, they just don't want to touch real estate, I guess. So that's where that was. But conventional banks, they were okay with lending for this. So the way that I phrased it when I was talking about a steel building, you want to be honest, because you'd hate to go down the line and then have them say, whoa, 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 this has steel in it? 20% down right now. So what I've been saying, when they ask like, and what type of home is it, or what are you going to build? Is it modular, whatever, is I've been saying it's stick built, because it is, all the parts are delivered there and it's going to be erected there. But the outer frame is made with steel, because that's true. They put up the shell, the steel shell, and then the inside is still framed with, wood, insulation, drywall, all the same. And then sometimes I gauge your audience, but sometimes I add like, yeah, it just seemed like a superior building material, not to mention like, because it's rot proof. It's, termite and pest proof. Nothing's going to burrow into it. It's fireproof. So it just seemed like a good choice. And the lenders that I said that to were like, oh, yeah, I don't think that'll be a problem. So at least you've been upfront about it. Sorry about that. So anyway, we did all that work. The banks that I ended up finding 3 actually that we would be able to work with. One of the let's see, I probably left messages for 24 banks, or, called them, left messages, whatever. Spoke to about 10, and of those, 1 was offering conventional mortgages. Little background, conventional versus FHA. If you are buying a house or building a house and you can't afford to put 20% down, you will have to pay something called PMI, private mortgage insurance. And with an FHA loan, you pay that forever unless you refinance to a different loan. With a conventional loan, the PMI payment will automatically drop off once you hit 20% equity or thereabouts. Some loans are a little bit different. But anyway, it goes away by itself. You don't have to refinance. The disadvantage of refinancing is you have to repay closing costs, which can be thousands of dollars. So, little background there. So I found one bank that would offer a conventional construction loan with 5% down, which is kind of unheard of. That was like the only one that I found. And they were okay with the idea of the steel building, but they did say we only work with approved vendors. And so they said since we haven't worked with Worldwide Steel Buildings, who's the company, our steel manufacturer, then you will need to have them fill out a W-9 and a builder's resume. Now, Worldwide Steel Buildings is not a builder. They're just basically like when you build a house, a regular house, you get your wood from a lumber mill. They are basically the lumber mill. They're the steel mill. They cut the pieces to size and, ship the steel to my site for someone else to put up. They're a great company to work with, by the way. When I told them I need a builder's resume, they were like, but we're not a builder. They could have just said, this doesn't apply to me. I'm not doing this. But instead they said, we'll put together a company profile that I think will meet that underwriter's needs, which super helpful. Thank you, Worldwide Steel. So anyway, there are additional hoops I need to jump through to get that, and they still need to be approved by that bank's underwriter. But that's an option. We found another one that was offering 10% down, which was like kind of the top of what we could afford, but we could do it. 10% down and a higher interest rate. So that's a good backup. And he also said, like, I haven't heard of the steel building thing, but I don't think it'll be a problem. And our third backup was someone, or actually maybe this is our, whatever, second, third backup, whatever. We found another bank who would do an FHA loan, construction loan, with 5% down. But again, the disadvantage of that is you keep the PMI on there. I'm looking at my notes from my bankers. And he also said he doesn't think steel is a problem, but he did say that with FHA loans, they have some special rules. For example, if you are purchasing from a family member, a house, if you're purchasing a house from a family member, they charge more. Like they require a higher down payment. And he said, it's stupid, it doesn't make sense, but let me make sure that that's not the case for land. Because for those of you that recall, Chad and I we are subdividing the land that my parents own, and we're buying our half from them. So he said, let me make sure that that's not the case for land with FHA as well. So we found a couple of backups, and as like a fourth place last resort, we know that the agricultural lenders will handle steel buildings. They don't have a problem with that. But since they required that 20% down, we had been thinking like, oh, we'll get a personal loan from Bank A to make up the rest of that 20% down payment. And I don't know why no one told us this before, but one of the bankers was like, unfortunately, you can't do that. You can't use debt to pay for debt. And I was like, okay, I kind of get that, but that's super dumb that we did qualify for a $360,000 mortgage, but because for this smaller mortgage, you require 20% down, it just doesn't, whatever. It just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, so if you make all of these calls, you call all your banks, you find ones that'll do construction loans and that aren't immediately scared away by steel buildings, if they show hesitation for steel buildings, but you really want to use that bank, I would ask them, like, be prepared to say, well, what if I provided you a W-9 and a builder's resume or some type of company profile? Would you be willing to work with that company? Because what the builder's resume does and what the company profile from Worldwide Steel Buildings is for is to just basically show they are actively doing business. They haven't been sitting on their butts for 10 years and aren't up to date on codes, and that they're reputable. So it asks for bank references and trade references and, previous builds and things like that. So if you have a bank you really want to use, they have a good interest rate, only 5% down, get in front of that. Don't let them, they are still people and they do still want to make a deal. So ask them, hey, what if I gave you a W-9 and a builder's resume? Would you be willing to work with them? And they might say, maybe, or let me ask my underwriter. So no doesn't have to be the last answer, but just keep that in mind. So that's the end of the how-to. Make your list of banks, find out which ones do construction loans, call those first, ask them their rates and their percent down, ask them about steel buildings and word it like a stick built. By the way, stick built means it's assembled on site versus modular, which is assembled far away and they ship the pieces. And if they say they're uncomfortable with steel buildings, ask if they would accept a W-9 and a builder's resume to reconsider. If you are building in upstate New York, the new constructions are unfairly taxed. Those are actually not my words. Those were the words of a lender. He said, I want you to know before you try to build here, your taxes are going to be astronomical. And I was like, great. We had already gotten a message from an assessor again back in July, so that may have changed. So for a 4-bed, 2.5 bath, attached 2-car garage with a full basement, we were looking at almost $11,000 a year in taxes. So that's every year. If we don't have a mortgage, we're still paying $1,000, almost $1,000 a month in taxes. So it is superbly expensive. So do make sure you know about the taxes. To find that out, you can just reach out to the assessor of that town and tell them the scopes, the layout and whatever they need to know about the house you're going to build, the layout, the square feet, the number of acres you're on, whatever. and ask them to project what your taxes will be, and they will tell you. Unfortunately, they are not bound in any way to a number that they email you. So if they tell you, yeah, it'll be $5,000, and then it ends up being $12,000, there is nothing you can do. So it's a little stupid, but ideally they want people to move to their towns. So Windsor, by the way, Windsor, New York, is the lowest taxes in the municipality. So if you are looking to move to upstate New York near the Pennsylvania border, check out Windsor. We could be neighbors. So I hope this was helpful. Obviously, leave a comment if you have additional questions. I am happy to help and share the woes of this process with anyone who will listen. So yeah, good luck.